Lieutenant Governor Malcolm Wilson, Speaker Carlino, President Pro Tem of the Senate, Walter Mahoney, Majority Leader of the Assembly, Engels, Minority Leader Travier, Minority Leader of the Senate, Zaretsky. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a privilege to appear again before you. I should like to reassure you not to be dismayed by the weight of this message, because I have permission from your leaders to, at points, refer to the headings of sections and proceed to read further on in the text. I should also like to take this opportunity to extend on behalf of Mrs. Rockefeller and myself a warm invitation to all of you in the legislature to attend the reception at the mansion following this occasion. I'm honored and pleased at the start of this 184th session of the legislature, a personal welcome to you, the newly elected and the re-elected members of the Senate and the Assembly of the state of New York. Free government, self-government, is a serious business and a serious responsibility. The times of danger and conflict in which we live make this work more serious than ever. They make it historic. Let us face the stern and simple truth. History is watching. It is watching and it is asking, do free men have the wisdom and the will, the sense of responsibility and the sense of purpose to make freedom work for all the people? The fact is that freedom, free men, and free processes of government is under test or under fire across the earth. Everywhere the question is basically the same. Can free men rule themselves responsibly, imaginatively, purposefully? We have here assembled in this capital city of this Empire State to give renewed evidence that it can be done. But even in these fast-changing times, it is free government that reflects the best interest of all the people. We've also been a pioneer state. We have never known more urgent time to show it than right now. It is right and necessary, too, that the proof of free government, its courage and its wisdom, be given on the state level. For our state governments are the keys to our whole federal system, the basic political structure of American freedom. The state government is close enough to the people to know what the people need, and it has the resources and the capacity to act upon this knowledge, to be responsive as well as responsible. In the American scheme of things, therefore, it is a special challenge to a state government to show how creatively freedom can function. We are here to do precisely this. And I say we in a most specific and definite sense. I mean the legislature and the executive, working together in a common trust and confidence and purpose. I mean partnership government. We have a good foundation to build upon. The record already spells progress. We have firmly established the fiscal integrity of our state. We have notably improved the climate for increased job opportunities within our state, making New York a place where more and more people and industries want to do their work. And so we have quickened the pace of our economic growth. We have shown practical and productive concern for all phases of the social and economic well-being of the people, from education and parks to health and housing, while also making the state itself more responsive and efficient, with the first serious reorganization of the executive branch in 33 years. All this is good, and I believe you will agree that it provides the sound basis from which we can more effectively meet the remaining problems before us. Vast and varied as these human problems are, they all affect the unity and strength which is the very heart of our society. This unity and strength ought to be found in the family. And every family in our state must face these problems directly or indirectly in three categories of challenge. The first is youth, its education in the present, its opportunities for the future. The second is family living, and particularly the complex of urban problems that affect the entire environment of the great part of our population, as well as the prosperity of our rural areas. And the third is our senior citizens, their health, well-being, and dignity in the community. These three groups of problems roughly correspond to the three generations of our citizenry at all times. For the problems and the needs of both young and aged fall not only upon them, but also upon the middle generation. On the one side, this middle generation must face all the problems of educating its children. On the other side, it must face all the problems of caring for its elders. To help in meeting these responsibilities is one of the great challenges to our state government. For in this area, they meet the needs and the destinies of not one, but all three generations. Government must have a heart as well as a brain. It must care as well as act. It must be concerned, not merely competent. In this spirit, then, let us look at some of the specific matters before us and before the three generations of our citizenry. First, opportunities for youth. There is no greater or more crucial task for a free nation than to prepare its youth for citizenship in a democracy. A generation of free citizens that fails to look up beyond itself is only preparing the death of its society. If we wish as a nation to endure, we must educate. A, elementary and secondary education. The people of New York believe deeply in preparing their children for life by providing them at the outset with the best education available. This belief is basically responsible for the state's position of national leadership in elementary and secondary education. It is reflected in unremitting efforts at the local level to improve the public schools and in sharp increases in state aid to education. For the 2 school years commencing in the present administration, almost $1.4 billion in state aid have been provided for local school districts, representing an increase of more than $278 million over any 2 preceding years. Special aid for rapidly growing districts and for those with higher tax rates are included in these grants. The preparation of standard school plans to reduce capital costs for new schools, long advocated by Senator Gordon and Assemblyman Fulmer, was approved by your honorable bodies at my request last session. The Education Department and the Department of Public Works have moved swiftly ahead under this 1960 legislation, and the first standard plans will be available to local school districts this summer. Despite these significant steps, many school districts are encountering difficulties in carrying their share of rising educational costs. I await with interest the report of your special committee on school district improvement under the chairmanship of Charles H. Diefendorf, which is studying various proposals to assist local school districts in meeting the financial problems of elementary and secondary education. Last year, we took the first of 3 planned steps toward making it possible for every school district to have its state aid based upon school attendance for the current year. I recommend that at this session, we take the second step toward this goal. Also, I wish to make two specific proposals relating to special aspects. Complex problems of deep human concern rise from the growing urbanization of the population of New York State. More than 85% of the people of this state now live in urban areas, and their daily lives are affected by a variety of problems found especially in such areas. It is tragic that in great urban centers of today, there exists a shortage of decent rental housing for those with modest means, a lack of sufficient opportunity for good jobs. Too many schools are not of high quality. But there are serious commuter problems, pollution of air and water, and most hurtful of all, barriers of racial and religious discrimination. Let us then consider the all-important question of the leadership to overcome these problems and achieve for all our citizens in urban areas the opportunity for better living. The proposal with respect to the new office will be submitted to your honorable bodies in the executive budget. B, new jobs in urban communities. Most urban areas of the state have benefited greatly in terms of increased job opportunities from the vigorous and intensive campaign of the State Department of Commerce led by Commissioner Keith S. McHugh, and from the various actions taken by your honorable bodies at my request to improve the business climate. Industry has made $4 billion of capital investment in New York during the past 2 years for new plant and machinery and the modernization and expansion of existing industrial facilities. In 1960, the index of business activity has hit a new all-time high, and the average total employment has improved markedly, with 300,000 more New Yorkers at work than in 1958. Unfortunately, some of the upstate urban areas have not shared fully in this economic growth. Despite persistent efforts by the Department of Commerce, community groups to attract new industries into such areas, they still persist as labor surplus areas. To the man without a job, there is little immediate comfort in the fact that the economy of the state is improving, or has improved, or that it is considerably better than in many other states, in the face of a national slowdown in business. To meet this situation, I've taken some major steps and want to recommend additional ones. First, public works stockpile, and one specific purpose. Secondly, job development authority. Another constitutional amendment, sponsored by Senator Jerry, now before your honorable bodies for second passage, would allow the state to guarantee the bonds of a new governmental agency to encourage industrial development up to $50 million in principal amount. The agency will be authorized in surplus labor areas to advance up to 30% of the total cost of land and buildings for new industrial plants and for the modernization of existing industrial buildings. On the basis of the recent experience of the Department of Commerce, with its concentrated effort to develop job opportunities in surplus areas, I am convinced that this proposal can provide us with a more basic approach to the problems of these areas and with important additional means of attracting private capital. Accordingly, I strongly support and urge the adoption of this constitutional amendment, because of the principal purpose of such an agency would be to foster new job opportunities and to realize the goal of full employment. I propose that the agency be known as the New York Job Development Authority. While this authority's first effort, next I will admit reading of the sections on capital city rehabilitation and the New York City Charter revision, both of which I urge for your study. Now let us turn to page 31.5, Transportation. My staff and the Director of Office of Transportation have also been meeting with Nassau County officials over the problems of the commuters who depend upon the Long Island Railroad. I think all of you saw in this morning's paper a statement of the financial situation that railroad finds itself in. On the basis of the study of these problems and the recommendations of the State Office of Transportation, I shall recommend legislation. 1, to accelerate in commuter areas served by the railroads in difficulty the general railroad tax relief granted in 1959 so that the full benefits of such relief may be realized as soon as possible rather than in 1964. 2, to exempt from local real property taxes certain properties devoted to commuter passenger service, and 3, to grant state aid to the localities affected to cover half the revenue losses caused by such additional tax relief. 4, to require from the commuter railroads in return for tax relief definite commitments for continued and improved services, and 5, to implement in accordance with the principles I shall discuss shortly the recommendations of the Public Service Commission relating to the full crew laws. This program will assist all railroads operating in the state, but particularly those servicing the urban areas. It requires a joint contribution of all interested groups: railroad management, railroad labor, the municipalities through which the railroads run, the commuters as taxpayer, and the public at large. It will continue our policy of assistance in the public interest to this vital segment of New York's transportation system. Also, in order to carry out our program initiated in 1959, I recommend at this time 1, second passage and submission to the people of the constitutional amendment before you, which would permit the state to guarantee Port Authority bonds to help finance the acquisition of commuter car equipment, and 2, the extension of the New York, New Jersey Transportation Agency for an additional year. B, full crew laws. Part 5, namely freight handling and the Port of New York and the Niagara Frontier and Lake ports. Good government. The role of good government in helping to meet problems of human concern can be effective only as the tools of government are effective. Good government provides the essential framework within which public action creates the climate and the opportunity for a better life for the individual. Strengthening of the tools of government goes forward in this state on several points. A, reorganization of the executive branch. Last year I submitted to your honorable bodies a plan for the first broad-scale reorganization of the executive branch since 1927. With your cooperation, many important measures designed to streamline state government, to improve its administration, to increase efficiency and achieve economies, and to make it responsive to the needs and wishes of the people were adopted in the 1960 session. I urge your favorable action at this session in passing for the second time the proposed constitutional amendment basic to the reorganization sponsored by Senator Pierce and Assemblyman Goddard to provide legislative flexibility in transferring and consolidating functions within the executive branch and to achieve improved administration and operating economies. In addition, I plan to seek your approval at this session for additional measures to improve further the operation of state government. Principal recommendations will deal with interstate compact agencies, on which matters my staff has been working with your joint legislative committee on interstate cooperation headed by Senator Barrett. Civil service improvements, more meaningful grievance procedures. Governmental leadership recognizes its responsibility by the adoption of enlightened personnel practices to promote cooperation for better governmental operations. An important aspect of sound government-employee relations is an appropriate procedure for settling employee grievances and complaints. In 1955, an executive order was issued which revised the pre-existing grievance procedure for state employees. Experience under this executive order, however, has revealed that there is room for improvement. Accordingly, I will soon promulgate an executive order to improve the state's grievance procedure and to further harmonious employee relations. Review of the Conlon-Wadlin Act. The continuity of public service is essential to the democratic process. This requires dedicated and faithful performance by civil servants and continuing efforts at all levels of government to improve personnel practices and procedures. Government employees recognize the distinctive nature of their employment when they, as most do, renounce the right to disrupt government operations by strike efforts. A strike or a threat of strike by public employees is wrong in principle and utterly inconsistent with the special responsibility of public servants. Many responsible persons, however, without countenancing strike action by public employees, have expressed dissatisfaction with the penalty provision of the common London law, and have urged that these provisions be revised in the light of experience since the law was enacted in 1947. Your Joint Committee on Industry and Labor Conditions has undertaken such a review, and I look forward to its recommendations with respect to this matter. 8 states to ratify this amendment. Now let's turn, ladies and gentlemen, to a subject of underlying importance: increasing job opportunities. A good job providing steady employment is the basis of opportunity and fulfillment to the individual. My administration has been engaged from the beginning in a concentrated effort to improve job opportunities in the state by stimulating economic growth. This effort has resulted in substantial progress, which has been achieved by markedly improving the state's business climate. A good business climate depends on sound fiscal policies which build business confidence in the state's government. Your honorable bodies had the courage to restore the state's fiscal integrity and thus help mightily to create this confidence. The ability of New York business to compete with those in other states and in foreign countries, the attractiveness of New York to new business enterprise directly affects not only the individual, but also the state's ability to provide public services, its schools, its highways, its hospitals, and other facilities vital to the general welfare. Much has been accomplished. More work remains to be done. Let us examine some specifics. Jobs in the state's economy. New York's improved business climate has played a major role in the decisions of private industry, as I mentioned earlier, to invest $4 billion in new plant expansion within the state in the last 2 years. This has created 300,000 new jobs. But with growing population, unemployment has not declined as rapidly as employment has increased. Continuing unemployment is a source of deep concern to me. We can never lose sight of the suffering and the anxiety of those without work, the strains borne not only by them, but also by their families. I shall continue to watch closely developments in this situation, and if it seems advisable, I shall at a later time recommend to your honorable bodies the so-called trigger point legislation to extend the normal benefit duration of unemployment insurance whenever there occur specific economic conditions of recession character. Next week, I plan to visit Chicago and Los Angeles to open branch offices of the Department of Commerce in those cities. The purpose of these offices is to invite attention to the advantages of New York State to those Midwestern and West Coast enterprises contemplating eastward expansion, and thus to help us grow as their companies grow. The Commerce Department, in addition to its efforts to attract new industry, has worked hard to develop and promote travel and tourism, which brings $2.5 billion annually to the citizens of New York State. The competition for industry and for travel is severe and increasing. It comes not only from sister states, but foreign countries, which are challenging us in world markets and indeed within our own state. To ensure New York's continued growth and new job opportunities, and to meet this intense competition from other states and from abroad, I urge that the legislature approve a realistic expansion of the promotional efforts of the Department of Commerce. It is truly the sales arm of the state, and money spent by it is an investment which will produce jobs, payrolls, tourist dollars, and consequent revenue for the support of government services at every level. B, farm prosperity. And now in conclusions, and may I say parenthetically to your honorable bodies, that I appreciate your patience and long suffering. The challenge to us, this is a conclusion, the challenge to us, the elected representatives and leaders of our state, is both stirring and complex. It is stirring because we are challenged to show the wisdom and vigor of free government at a time when freedom itself throughout the world faces mortal danger. It is complex because this is the nature of our modern life, of our society, and hence of the government that must meet the problems of this society. Whatever the particular challenge and call upon our leadership, the key test is always the same: to prove that free government works well and wisely in the service of the well-being and opportunity of the individual. Concretely, we must demonstrate the unique role of state government in our system. The best tradition of American government does not leave the individual or the community to grapple helplessly with the problems beyond their power. The best American tradition, too, does not abdicate local responsibility by waiting for federal government to resolve these problems from a distance. With clear resolve to preserve the vitality and dynamism of the American tradition, let us, in close cooperation and with common purpose under God, get on with our important work. Thank you, John.
With the expression of thanks on behalf of the members of the Senate for the hospitality which has been accorded by the Assembly in customary fashion, with a request to the members of the Senate that they return to that House for the purpose of concluding the business of the day, I now declare this joint session of the Senate and the Assembly adjourned.